One. We are live. How do you do? It's Bradley J. And welcome to the Ignore the Machine broadcast. Special guest today, Doug Arion, who's an astronomer, physicist, teacher, professor, and much more. And today we're going to talk about unidentified objects. UFOs, which are unidentified flying objects. UAPs, which are unidentified atmospheric phenomena. And angels. And the reason is, on the 25th of August, lawmakers, there was an article that talked about an upcoming hearing, which lawmakers talked about their different views of extraterrestrial explanations, because they heard from a UFO whistleblower who claims the U.S. is concealing evidence of non-human craft. The question looms over members of Congress: are we alone? Well, I have my opinions, pretty solid opinions on that. And it's funny to me to see some of the things that supposedly well-meaning and intelligent people are saying. So this promises to be pretty fun. Where do we start? Like, what is your take? I mean, that may be pretty broad to start out with, but what are your thoughts on the sudden interest and the whistleblower?
Well, I mean, there's always been interest. I mean, even up here in New Hampshire, if you go down Route 3, there's this big historical plaque about this couple who claimed they saw something land and do stuff here in Franconia Notch, as crazy as it may seem. Bernie and I forget what their names are. So this stuff goes back a long way of seeing things as like, oh, obviously it's something from space coming to get us. And there was Close Encounters of the Third Kind and all of that up. And then the famous Roswell, New Mexico episodes, and leading to the idea that, in the super secret space in Nevada, there's an Area 51 where they have all of these things that have never been seen before, and so on.
So what do you think, people? This is a good one to comment on. Please feel free to comment. I guess I'll tell you what I feel, and then you can blow it up or agree with it. 99% there are other life out there. 99.5%. There has to be. Just the numbers say. There has to be something.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But there's no guarantee. Actually, it probably wouldn't look like us. Well, actually, there's a debate. It may not even be carbon life form. It might be silicone-based life form. They might only be the size of a pin. And like a billion of them could fit on maybe they're the size of a photon. I don't know, maybe not that small. But maybe a billion of them could fit on a thing the size of Boston. I don't know. There's no guarantee they look like us. To me, it seems weird to assume that there are going to be beings with 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head, flying craft that are saucer-shaped, because the chances that any alien beings would have evolved to look like us are pretty slim. Let's start there.
Exactly. I totally agree with you. I think, given that stars make carbon and oxygen, and carbon, hydrogen, oxygen make sugar and all of organic chemistry, there's got to be organic chemistry happening all over the universe. It's just out there. I mean, you can see these carbon compounds everywhere. But at the same time, I totally agree with you. Just look at the Earth and how many different ways you can make life. I mean, 5 minutes ago, you and I were talking about what the colors were going to look like in the trees this year. Think about all the different kinds of trees. Those are all kinds of life. I mean, If you go to another planet and you find life, it's extremely unlikely it looks like us. It's extremely likely you'll find something, but it's not going to look like us.
And another thing, what is the likelihood that a being would travel all the way that the being would have to travel? By the way, what's the likelihood that they would have that technology? Possible.
Sure.
But travel all the way here and not make contact. Why would you come here and not say hello, or not kill us all and take our resources if you need them, or whatever? Why would you just fly around and split, or continue to fly around, and every once in a while, according to some, one of your vehicles would crash and the government would hide it in some warehouse? That seems unlikely to me.
That seems very unlikely to me. It seems totally crazy if you did that. And one of the analogies I like to use, because I get these questions in my presentations all the time about people saying, well, haven't we been visited? And my analogy is this. You can ask your listeners. I mean, think about some celebrity that you're really, really interested in, that you're a big fan of. I mean, I'm sure there are many that think of you that way, Bradley. I certainly do. I think you're really great. Um, but think of all the people around the world. Think about, pick a famous person. Robert Redford. There's a lot of Robert Redford fans out there.
Yep, big fan.
Yeah. Has Robert Redford ever visited your house?
No.
No, of course not. Because just think about it. There are, 80 million or 100 million houses in the country. How likely is it that he'd stumble on yours? And look, you're a big fan. You think he'd want to come and stumble on yours. Well, our galaxy alone has 500 billion stars. Each of those stars has planets. We've been finding planets around every kind of star. So figure there's a couple of trillion planets in the galaxy. Why would you find this one?
Right. And there must be closer ones. By the way, trying to make folks understand how much a trillion is. You have a million, right? And then you have 1,000 millions to get a billion, and then 1,000 billions to get a trillion.
That's right. That's right.
Like if you tried to count, you couldn't count to a trillion in your lifetime, right?
Right. Well, just think there are 8 billion people on the planet. So you have to have, 125 times the number of people on the planet before you reach just a trillion people.
Yeah, by the way, 8 billion people on the planet. This is a little side thing. What do you think's the right amount of people on the planet? 8 billion, too many?
It certainly seems that way. I mean,
I'm going to go with 2.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you go back to when you and I were kids and they broke, I think it was like 2 billion, something like that, 1 to 2 billion. I remember when a billion got broken.
You do? Wow.
Vaguely. I mean, I'd have to think back. It's like elementary school. I mean, I don't remember what the rate is. But in any case, there are an awful lot of people. And as a species, we use a tremendous amount of resources per person compared to the resources per unit of any other animal. There's an awful lot of people out there.
And a related topic related to what you just said, but not too related to the main topic. The other day, it was, I was looking at bees and thinking, the poor bee slaves all its life, makes like a teaspoon of honey, but the bee contributes a lot to the world, a single bee. Mm-hmm. Every animal, pretty much every animal, earthworms are food and they aerate the earth. But then I try to think, what do humans do to benefit the earth? Do they do anything? Do they contribute or only destruct?
I can't think of a particular contribution we make to the ecological status or geological or meteorological status of the planet.
So in a very real way, worms are more valuable, bees are more valuable, and we're just here to kill everything.
Yeah. Well, two great quotes about that. The gentleman who invented the polio vaccine, who had a great quote. He said, "If you remove all the insects from the earth, in 50 years the planet will be sterile. All life ends. If you remove all the people from the earth, in 50 years all the other life will flourish."
Yeah.
I think it's a brilliant quote.
It's sad to think that we're the only species that I can think of that does not contribute to the earth, but only destroys it. Anyway, back to the debate about UFOs, UAPs, and angels. I'm going to go through some little points in the article from The Hill that you sent me, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Many members of the House say they haven't thought about it much. But some members say they've seen enough to think that UAPs are of non-human extraterrestrial origin. UAP is unidentified atmospheric phenomena. Meaning what? Non-human extraterrestrial origin. Are they saying they've seen enough to believe that there are aliens?
Well, they're saying, I mean, I'll give you two sides of the hearing. I mean, there are people who are just on the alien bandwagon. And they're like, there's something coming here and being hidden from us and we need to check. The flip side that I agree with is there's no question that people are seeing things. There are well-established pilots who see things, shiny things or whatever. And it is worth trying to find out what that is because, either there's interesting physics going on, or there are those who are launching things that we should know about. And it's worth looking into that from that perspective. You don't start with the perspective of, oh my God, we're being invaded from, pick your favorite planet around your favorite star. But okay, there's something here that these folks are seeing. Let's try and figure out what that is. That's a reasonable thing to do, right? You see something you don't understand, it's worth investigating it. So I have no problem with investigating it from a science perspective, but I do have a problem with investigating it from a science fiction perspective.
Someone said, Byron Donald said, listen, God made a phenomenal planet with phenomenal people. I'll agree with the first part, not the second part. Even though we disagree, we have our own issues. I don't think we're the only ones in the universe. Okay, fair enough. Marjorie Taylor Greene says that that's angels or fallen angels. I'm not sure why the fallen part is relevant, but there are those that will believe that. What do you think it is? Do you think? I mean, why are the photos always so fuzzy? If you're seeing these things, take a photo. If it's a real craft, I feel like it's maybe atmospheric light phenomena. Now,
I mean that's what makes the thing interesting, is like, what are these phenomena? Because there are, quote, pictures of them, but are those pictures of real things? Are they optical effects? Is there something in the atmosphere that's creating these light sources? I don't know. But you need, I agree with you, you need to look at all of those aspects of it. I am definitely not in the fallen angel camp by any means of what these things could be. But you're right. I mean, you should be able to get some real observations and then make some sense of it. And we don't really have that, do we?
No. Kevin McCarthy says, I think the Department of Defense would tell us if they were hiding craft that had crashed. And that's another thing. What is we used to hear that the government wouldn't tell us because they don't want us to panic. But I don't know if that holds water.
Well, I don't know. Well, I mean, what I'll tell you is this. In one of our many previous discussions, we talked about the work I had done out at the Nevada test site. Right, because I was involved in national defense work, and that area in Nevada is part of the big area of Nevada that the government sets aside for military testing. So there is such a thing as Area 51. I worked, in Area 12 was Area 51. And, we were underground a lot of the time, but you come up, and you'd be working on the surface and you'd see all sorts of things flying over. And I remember one day we looked up and we said, that is the ugliest airplane I've ever seen. And it was the stealth fighters being tested before we admitted we had them, right? It was completely classified, but of course it was over our space so we could see it. And let's admit, it's an ugly airplane, especially compared to like an F-16, which is a beautiful airplane. But, it's functional, right? So, but if somebody didn't know what that was going on, they'd look up and they'd see this really strange shaped thing flying overhead. And those who have a predilection would say, oh, look, that's some spacecraft coming from God knows where, because it didn't look like anything you'd recognize, right? We found out later, oh, it's a stealth airplane, okay. But none of us were like, oh my God, the aliens have come to Area 51 to reclaim their goods. We just looked up and went, oh, that's a strange looking airplane. But, that's how that gets played.
Kevin McCarthy said he doubts that the government would keep it a secret because they would probably request more money, speaking particularly about the Department of Defense, which does seem to make sense. They could certainly use it to get more money. And Kevin McCarthy says he's very supportive of letting the American people see whatever we have. It seems weird to me that the government would keep it. What would be the benefit to the government of keeping it secret? I don't know that I understand that. It would seem that the incumbent, whoever's in power at the time, would benefit by a perceived common enemy such as aliens, and would be quick to tell them folks so that they could rally around the president and rally around the flag, much like they do with any sort of war.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm a physicist. I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not sure. I know how, in fact, I know I don't know how people think. Um, but there are interesting circumstances where you ask yourself, is this better known generally or not known generally? Um, because I mean, look at the kinds of responses you're getting now from these different things, and people who take one extreme view versus another extreme view. So if you put that information, let's assume it were real, which I think you and I agree it's not. But if you had such things, you might go, okay, this is really weird. But on the other hand, you wouldn't keep it to one country, right? If this is a major thing coming here, you'd be interfacing with scientists in lots of places to get a lot of brains working on it, and that certainly hasn't happened, right? I mean, how many of us who know this stuff are there?
Right. Let's say they are real and they show up. Let's say, I don't know, five or six ships show up here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, take me to your leader. What course should we take? It seems that history tells us that anytime any new group of beings with superior technology encounters, reaches out, they wipe out whatever the Europeans came and killed the Indians. It's what we do. And with that in mind, should we just try to kill them as soon as they get here to protect the Earth?
Well, I mean, two things. One is, in all of these things, we're grossly anthropomorphizing, right?
Right, that's right.
What you started with was, of course they're going to look like us.
And have laser, yeah, right.
And so everybody who draws an alien, quote, alien, it always looks like us. And you're like, okay, what else on this planet looks like us? And the answer is nothing. So why would it look like that? Why does it look like a snail or a trout or a maple tree?
Right.
So then assuming that the behaviors of other things are going to be like the behaviors of humans is a second level of additional anthropomorphizing. Well, just because we act like that, why is it that everything out there is going to act like that too?
Right.
And the third thing, an absolute worst case is, let's assume that boy, are we going out on a limb. These beings exist, they have that technology to get here, and they threaten to take us over. Why do you think our weapons are going to be able to become something that they have? If they've developed a capability to travel at least the speed of light to get from point A to point B, why wouldn't you think that they have either some way to defend themselves or some way to overcome whatever it is you have? So, I mean, you're asking for an awful lot of really crazy science fiction assumptions to get to that point.
Back to what looks like humans. Sometimes I think it's just it could have gone another way. And if another species, I don't know, a platypus, whatever, had developed opposable thumbs and learned to use tools, they could have, that species could be the dominant species on Earth and be building computers. Duck-billed platypuses could be building computers, and we would not be in charge. It just could have gone another way, right?
Well, it certainly did. I mean, think about it. In order to get to the point of having people on the planet, we've had 5 major extinctions which wiped everything out. Dinosaurs were here for 250 million years. Humanoids of any kind have been here 1 to 2 million. They were here, 150, 200 times longer than we've been here. And modern humans have only been here about 100,000 years. So it's thousands of times longer that dinosaurs were here. They just had a bad day. If they hadn't had that one bad day, they'd still be here.
And they probably would have evolved into something much more refined, I guess is the word. Okay, let's take a look. Let's try to put a little physics in here. It is prohibitively far to travel, at least for humans, with our modes of transportation. But maybe we don't understand physics and the world and the universe like we think we do. Maybe there's a shortcut to get places. Is it possible that some sort of alien life form had figured out how to figured out wormholes or figured out how to travel in another dimension that bypasses time and pop into our world and pop out again. There are particles, as you've taught me, that will show up in a vacuum for a second and then pop out again.
Mm-hmm.
If particles can do that, why couldn't something else?
Well, with the physics that we know at the moment, totally agree with you. There might be physics we don't know at the moment. The amount of energy and the duration of time that things can pop in and out are related to each other. The more energy that's involved, the shorter the time can be, which is why it's only little particles that show up and disappear. Elephants don't show up in front of you and disappear because their duration would be so short it'd be non-existent.
Right.
So if you're talking about moving a spacecraft, that's a tremendous amount of energy, right?
Right.
Equals MC squared. A lot of M, big E, to do that. So based on the physics we know now, that wouldn't happen.
I see, because it has to be so small.
Such a small interval of time.
All right.
Now,
All right.
maybe there's a piece, as you said, maybe there's a piece of physics we don't know. But on the other hand, the time durations for the universe and the scales and everything, those observations are agreeing pretty well. So, but you're right. I mean, maybe there's another way that could be done. It would be wicked cool to figure it out, wouldn't it?
What about the wormhole? I always figure wormholes are a possible thing.
Yeah, I mean, we've never seen one, but that would be cool. That would be really fun.
What is your general sense of how much of the total package of physics we understand? Half, 1%, something. Give me a number. Give me a ballpark.
I don't know. That's interesting because there's one huge hole, one enormous hole. There are lots of other holes, but one enormous hole in physics, which is putting gravity and particles together, putting quantum mechanics and gravity together. We still don't know how to do that. And until you do that, you don't know the very, very early universe, and you don't know the center of black holes. And those are two of the most important things, right? The whole beginning of the universe and what happens at the center of a black hole are related. And we don't know how to do that because we can't put gravity and quantum mechanics together. And there are a lot of really smart people working on it, people way smarter than me, trying to figure out how to put those pieces together. And so you could look at it and say, we've got 99 point something or other percent because we've covered everything else. Or you can say, we only have 1% because this big hole keeps us from putting the whole picture together. So, in terms of a number, it depends philosophically how you look at it. Is it like, well, you've got the biggest question in physics is still out there, so you really don't know much of anything. Or
right.
There's only one big question left, so you know a lot.
Right. And we kind of, for the last, 70, almost 100 years now, I don't know the exact number of years, after Einstein and his gravity thinking came quantum mechanics more, and the Copenhagen people, people with very complicated and strange theories about why things work. Things work well in quantum mechanics. Nobody knows why, and they refused to even allow talking about why it worked. And for 100 years, no studying got done on it because they just refused. Right?
Well, there's a whole group that way. I mean, there are also groups that are working on trying to understand it and do it. But yeah, certainly the biggest names, Bohr, of course, being the most famous, the shut up and calculate guy, is certainly took the stage quite a bit, given how.
Yeah, as I understand it, if you were a student and you wanted to work on why quantum mechanics worked, you wouldn't get a job. It would be.
There are philosophy of physics departments, but those are definitely on the small end of the available job market. Let's put it that way. There are those who are working on it, but it's not, the thing that most people grow up wanting to do.
Okay, so you and I both believe that there's got to be life, all kinds of life, not just one or two, but lots of places. Didn't show up here for various reasons. And what can you run through the reasons they didn't show up here again? One, it's way too far. 2 and 3. What are 2 and 3?
Well, the biggest reasons are, firstly, traveling, unless there's new physics, traveling in space is extremely difficult and just takes an awfully long time to get from point A to point B. The second thing is there are so many places just in our galaxy alone. You're looking at trillions of possible planets that you'd have to explore. So the probability of finding this particular one is very small. There are those who've argued that because we've been broadcasting radio for about 100 years, right? Radio's 100 years old-ish, that, well, that signal's going out 100 light years. Those folks could home in on this, find out there's something alive here. But if you travel at the speed of light, it's actually half that distance, right? Because it has to go out and they'd have to send a signal back. So it's 50 light years. And within 50 light years, there aren't that many stars. So you can go and you can look at all of them, and we have, and you don't see anything there. So it's not like we've been sending out a beacon and going, oh, come find me here. So by the time you put those pieces together, it's not impossible, right? I mean, the probability isn't zero, but it's really, really small. You have a much, much better chance of winning the big Mega Millions thing. That's what, $1.5 billion now or something crazy. Much better chance of that happening. And that's a very low chance than anything's going to actually come visit here.
And as far as investigations go and the government goes, you believe, and it seems reasonable, that they should spend the time and money to figure out what this stuff is, because who knows what that could lead to. You might want to know what it is. It might be some enemies working on some, maybe they have their own Area 51 and they're doing weird stuff.
Right. So I definitely think it's worth looking into, because there are enough reports of this from reputable people. Fighter pilots are pretty smart people, and they see some things, and it's worth checking out what those are, but from a scientific and objective standpoint, not jumping to the, okay, we want to know which planet this came from. It's more a matter of, okay, what causes this? Why does it happen? When does it happen? Where does it happen?
There are all kinds of anecdotal stories that are convincing. When I was in high school, I had a friend, Billy Goddard. And he was the most straightforward, straight-laced guy. And he swears that he was in Lee, New Hampshire, driving home on a dark New Hampshire road, that some sort of craft came and hovered right over his car as he traveled down the road for a lengthy period of time and then vanished. Maybe, again, it was some light thing and he just convinced himself it was a craft. But he didn't want to tell me. He made me swear not to tell anybody because he thought people would think he's crazy. Mm-hmm. And some of those are convincing. And, of course, if you're a person that wants to believe,
mm-hmm.
and your identity is such that you are a person that believes in conspiracies and stuff like that, then it's probably easy for you to embrace that. Before we go, tell me about some of the things going on in your life. What about did the Stellafane conference happen yet?
Stellafane is weekend after next. So it's the 100th anniversary. Great event. People should come.
You got to tell folks what that is.
So in Springfield, Vermont, of all places, exit 7 off I-91, down in southern Vermont, is where telescope building began in this country 100 years ago, 1923, as a matter of fact. A group of folks started grinding mirrors and building their own telescopes there. And that basically led to the vast majority of telescope design across the whole country, all the way into professionals and spacecraft. All basically was born out of this group there. And so since 1926, there's been a convention held in Springfield, Vermont, and people come from all over the world with the telescopes they've designed and built. So there are hundreds and hundreds of telescopes to look through, amazing speakers, workshops. It's a Friday, Saturday event. It's absolutely fantastic. And it's a great chance to, you want to connect with the sky and how to observe it. It's one of the greatest events anywhere in the world.
Right, folks, if you're looking for something different to do, I've been to this event, and for some reason I've been to Springfield, Vermont a lot because that's where I did my glider training, and I end up there a lot, strangely. But I've gone to this event, and it's super cool because it's young and old, men and women, people of all types come up there, and they bring the telescopes they have made themselves, and they're super impressive. Yours are among the most impressive.
Okay.
If you don't know, Doug has his own observatory that he built, which houses the telescopes that he also built, and now he's fitted them with cameras so he can go into classrooms and meetings at organizations and display in real time what's going on the sun and in space and the stars and the planets. It's quite a thing. And to go to this place where everyone is concentrated and so expert at something so cool in the beautiful confines of Springfield, Vermont, up this hill in the woods on the top of this, there's an open kind of grassy area on the top of this hill. It's quite a thing. I can't recommend it enough. And this year you are having a filmmaker document it, correct?
That's right. So, well, two things. One, we have a filmmaker documenting the 100th anniversary. And we're also showing a film that she and I created called Defending the Dark, which is about light pollution and all the special things that have been going on in Maine in particular, about protecting large areas of dark skies. So we're showing that on the night of Friday, which would be the 18th, right?
I don't know the date. Well,
Friday the 18th, we're going to be showing that. So a very special film showing. And that film's been on PBS. So you can look for Defending the Dark on PBS, so pbs.org. It's a great documentary that she did on dark skies, which is another topic you and I have talked about.
Our guest, Doug Arion, is very involved in protecting the dark skies and protecting particularly the Dark Sky Sanctuary up in Maine and getting the rest of us to try to do stuff that keeps light pollution down. Why is light pollution so bad? What are the number of reasons for it? And what are some of the simple things that towns could do?
Oh, absolutely. So firstly, the light pollution problem is not an astronomy problem. We see it because we lose stars, but light pollution creates a bunch of really bad things. Firstly, if you live in light polluted areas, it creates a lot of health effects, creates glare and makes it harder to see. It affects your body hormones if you're sleeping in light polluted areas, and so cancer rates are higher. Adolescent development is affected. So a lot of effects on people. You produce a lot of extra electricity for all of that, and that actually costs Americans $3 billion a year, and you're producing lots of carbon in the atmosphere to make power for light that you're not really using. It affects birds and insects. Over 1 billion birds die each year trying to migrate in this country alone, just because lighting is done so badly. Insects and pollinators are reduced by up to 60% because of light pollution, and that means pollinating your food, apple trees, corn plants, all of these things are affected by light pollution. So light pollution is really a very big problem in the environment as a whole. And of course, if you have it, the stars disappear too. But we really need to fix it because it has all of these effects. And
not to mention
having lighting that's only on when you need it, only as bright as you need, that shielded so it only lights the area you need, right? Having a road light should only light the road. It shouldn't be lighting your bedroom too, right?
Right.
How many people can't sleep at night because street lights come into their apartments? It's silly.
Right. There's not too much that's going to destroy human life on Earth. There's disease, there's nuclear war, and then there's getting hit by an asteroid. And if you have light pollution, you can't see the asteroids. That's a big thing. That's a legit thing. You can't do anything to move the trajectory of an asteroid that might be heading to Earth if you can't see it. And it's a real thing. That's how we had at least some of the mass extinctions before. That's how it'll happen. Will it happen when you're alive? Probably not, but maybe. And it's not a great idea to make it easier for one of those things to hit us.
Certainly,
Right.
Certainly not. Yeah. Between that and the immediate pollution effects that it's affecting our atmosphere and everything, it's a bad thing. And it's an easy fix, right? It's an easy fix that saves money. You're using smaller bulbs, less power, saves money.
And the one that I love is streetlights that don't shoot light up in the air, that just only reflect it down. Mm-hmm. If that way could you use half as much power if you did that? That would be huge.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You use far less electricity if all the light you're using goes in the right place. I mean, think about it. If you're watering your lawn and your sprinkler is set up where half the water goes onto the sidewalk, you have to use twice as much water to water your lawn, right? It's the
Right.
same problem, right? So why would you do it that way?
And finally, in your background, it says Mountains of Stars. Is that related to the Dark Skies project, or is this a completely separate project?
So Mountains of Stars is the public science program that I've been running for the last 12 years. Our motto is environmental awareness from a cosmic perspective. Uh, Using astronomy, when you look up at the sky, you get a real picture of where we fit into everything. And when you have that understanding, you have a much better sense of where you fit in onto the Earth. And dark sky preservation is just one of the many areas we cover. But yes, that is part of what we do. We're a partner with all the efforts to do dark sky preservation, environmental protection, and a lot of great astronomy outreach and telescopes and telescope building too. It's all part of what we do.
By the way, where again can people see the film made about dark dark skies that's coming up on the 18th? Where can you see that?
It's available through PBS. Look for Defending the Dark. But we're going to be showing it in Springfield at Stellafane
Okay.
Friday the 18th in the evening. So you can come and see it in person there or check it out on PBS. And we do showings in various places. We just did one the other day at the Fairbanks Science Museum in St. Johnsbury. It's shown by groups around the country as well. So look for it, but definitely check out the PBS site, or even better, come to Stellafane and have a great time and experience the sky.
Yes. And by the way, Mountains of Stars is meaningful because you live and work up in the White Mountains, which I think is super cool.
It's wonderful. We love living up here. Beautiful place.
And one of the main reasons you're up there is because the skies are darker, right?
The skies are dark enough to do astronomy up here, which is very important, very special.
All right. Doug Arion, thank you so much. As always, super interesting. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I love chatting with you. Let's do it more often.
Okay. I'm going to end this live portion and